All right, so I'm Matt from Stash Fab. We're based out of Alma, Colorado, and this is my mini buggy. So this chassis is a JHF goat-built kids chassis. This chassis is 42 inches wide. The normal chassis is 48 and up from here. So I had to stretch the front of it and the back of it to get everything to fit, including myself. And I boat-sided the sides so that the drivetrain would fit inside of it. The drivetrain in this car is a 22R on propane to an AW4 to a Dana 300 with a 4-to-1. The back stretched here so that this propane tank will fit back here. We got rear steer with PSC rams. They're 3x9s, so it's got about 45 degrees of steering front and rear. We got 14-inch rad flows on all four corners. We got 42-inch BFG KR2 stickies and 20-inch method bead locks. And then I kept the interior super simple. There's not much to it. It's got a coolant temp gauge, it's got trans temp, and then it's got a couple switches for fans and lights. We got quilted leather in the door cards and in the roof here. And then the stuff that everybody wants to see, it's running H1 portals. So these are from Z-Fab. He's based out of Salt Lake City. This portal box is a 2-gear portal box, which is a little different than the 74 weld stuff that these guys are installing a lot. The big issue is that the axle shafts spin the wrong direction. So to solve that in this car, the differentials are upside down. So these are Toyota 8-inch diffs. They're flipped upside down so that everything spins the right direction. And then with the portal, I have about 18 inches of clearance under the diff here. There's almost 22 under the axle tube. And the gear reduction out here is 1.92 to 1.
So we were talking extensively about what it takes to run a 2-gear portal in the parking lot here. And people either flip the diffs or they do
a rear engine.
Yeah, rear engine, so that way the engine's basically pointing the wrong way and the axle shafts spin the wrong way, but that's necessary for a 2-gear portal. Do you know what the benefits of a 2-gear versus a 4-gear are?
For this car, honestly, it's simplicity. You get the 1.92 to 1, and yeah, I mean, you're just less moving parts, really.
Cool. And what's it take to do, did you do the propane conversion on this 22R?
Yeah, so it's similar to a GOT propane kit. You basically just have an atomizer and a mixer. And this engine originally was carbureted. So you're just bolting that mixer onto the manifold, and then you're just making some new fuel lines. It's pretty simple. And that's kind of the beauty of this car, is there's not much wiring to it. There's more wiring in the accessories, but to run this car, once it's on, there's just a hot wire to the coil, and that's it. There's no fuel pump, nothing.
There's a lot of little details in this buggy that have your signature on it. Are there little things that people point out that are kind of like Easter eggs that you wouldn't really catch without diving deep into this that you could point out to us? I know there's cool stuff on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's little things like the center caps on the wheels. They all have the little mustache in them. I got the little Stash Fab tags on the side. If we come around the back here, we got a mustache cut out in the steering mount. There's one on the tailgate.
Oh, and this tailgate doubles as a table as well.
Yep, functional tailgate. Of course,
When it's flexed out, maybe not. We'll cut that in with B-roll. Big overland guy though. He's got a table coming off the back of this.
There's mustaches in the rear shock mounts. There's mustache in the steering column mount. And then I got the Stash Fab cut into the console. There's a steering wheel hanger.
Steering wheel pops off, obviously, if you're not familiar with kind of the buggy world. So it's a Toyota-based buggy, essentially. What about it makes it Toyota-based other than the obvious with a 22R engine?
So the big thing would be the diffs. Actually, the rear drive shaft is out of a Toyota pickup. And then there's a bunch of little things in here. The AW4, it came out of a Cherokee, but it's a transmission that's made by Aizen Warner. They made it for Toyota and they made it for Jeep. It's the same transmission. And then the big thing is this hood here. We got this car looking like a FJ40. This is from Twisted Customs. It's a 42-inch wide fiberglass FJ40 hood, grill, cowl. I wanted to keep it looking like a little FJ as much as I could.
So the diffs are 8-inch Toyota diffs. Where'd you get them?
Yeah, so these are 8-inch Toyota diffs, and they're out of a pickup truck that I had, 85 truck. I swapped the diffs. I swapped a different gear set into that truck, and I swapped these into this car. And with the portal and these diffs being upside down, you basically end up with a free high pinion.
That's cool. But there's a challenge to having your diffs upside down, which is oil. So how do you address the oil?
So with the pinion being on the top of this car, you basically have to over oil this diff. There's seals in this housing, and so the oil is filled all the way up to the pinion bearings in there. And so far that hasn't been an issue. I've driven this car 70 miles in one day and it did great.
Awesome. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've experienced while behind the wheel of this? Like, what are the coolest trails that you've run, and what's been the hardest trail that you've run in this?
So the coolest and the hardest, I'd say, would be 10 Falls out in Gypsum. The first time we got in there, I mean, the first few waterfalls are super undercut. This car got super wedged up in the first one, and I was able to get it out. That whole trail, though, it's just gnarly all day, and you're just driving massive waterfalls, and the car did great. And then we go run Carnage a lot. Carnage is more like a fun one for us. We can go mess around out there, and that's just like a great place to just test out new stuff if you tweak anything.
Yeah, this channel, so we try to like gatekeep things and not mention the names of trails, but I think in this case, when you're running trails that are like 10 out of 10 difficulty, it doesn't really matter because like, good luck. Like, we welcome you to go run Carnage in your whatever, your 4th gen that you just solid axle swapped. You should go do it. Yeah, you're gonna get body damage, and we'd like to see you there. So gatekeeping the really hard stuff is kind of unnecessary.
Absolutely, especially somewhere like 10 Falls. If you just see the entrance, it doesn't even look like a trail.
Yeah. Super cool. A couple other things that people that are not really familiar with the hardcore rock crawling scene or buggy world that might find surprising, right off the bat to me, 42s on 20s. Now, most shops that are kind of modern off-road shops are not gonna want to run 20-inch wheels. We always say more sidewall is better, but when you're on 42-inch tires, there's a big reason why 20s are more appropriate. You know, talk about that. There's kind of some tire slosh stuff going on, right?
Yeah, so the big thing with these is if you run a 17-inch wheel, what happens when you air down is the wheel starts turning inside of the tire, and you basically lose control out of this tire. So we run a 20, then when you're aired down and you're wedged in spots, you're gonna get a lot more response out of the tire. And then obviously you still have a ton of sidewall because it's such a big tire. And on these tires specifically, they are filled to the top of the wheel with water. So there's about 300 pounds in both these front tires. And that's just for ballast. Basically, when you brake over a big ledge, it's gonna pull the car up.
That's cool. Having ballast weight, kind of like a sailboat cresting over the top of a wave and pulling the rest behind it. It's the exact same idea with rock crawlers. So, well, you say 300 pounds in each tire of water?
Yep.
And can you really feel the difference? Like, is it super noticeable when you're behind the wheel?
Yeah, so driving it fast, this is what everyone asks about. When you drive this car fast, you don't notice it in a straight line, the second you go to turn the wheel, the car wants to dart wherever you turn it. And that's just because there's so much weight in there. It's just pulling the car around. When you're off-roading, the second you crest over something, it'd be like having like a couple people hanging off the front of the car. So you just have a ton more traction up front. So it's gonna pull you over stuff a lot easier.
That's awesome. And what's the fastest you've gone in this? You mentioned speed.
Yeah, so I've done 55 in it with the water in the tires. It's surprisingly smooth. That was the same day I drove this car 70 miles. Yeah, it's not bad. That's why people tell you to fill it to the top of the wheel. You get less of this like ballast sloshing around. It evens the water out more when you're going fast.
Well, if people are serious about this, they're going to ask some pretty obvious questions here. One is, how much money and how much time do you have into this? Because I know you built it yourself, you're a fabricator. One, what did it take you financially to do with your labor too? And then two, what do you think that would cost to have built?
Yeah, so I kind of did this car on the cheap. So I have around 30 into the car total. The portals themselves, they're around 10 grand, and then you gotta do axle shafts and you gotta do diffs and lockers. And then I have hour-wise, I have 3 years slowly into this car. But a car like this, you're gonna be like in the $60,000 to $70,000 range. Obviously these cars go up. You can run the newer style portals, you can run an EcoBoost, but I wanted to keep this car simple, cost effective, and obviously run some Toyota stuff since I had it.
Right on, man. Now, Z-Fab, this portal company, people might be shocked to learn that you could probably get into this exact buggy setup, which again, it's the 43-inch. It's a smaller chassis. It had to be stretched. There's certain things about it that, you know, axles already on hand. The Z-Fab portals are only like 10,000 bucks, and then you've got Brannock 300M axle shafts. The portals are like H1 Hummer portals. It's a lot different than 74 weld stuff. This is straight up just crawler portals, so it's like almost half the price for just the portal axles. but delivering a 92% gear reduction, which is super cool. And then you pair that up with a transfer case that is 4-to-1, and you're running super low, really deep in your gears. If you haven't been in a vehicle with that much torque and low end, what's the best way to kind of describe that to somebody that might be wheeling like a 3rd-gen Tacoma or something?
I mean, it'll drive through anything. Even with the water in the tires, this thing's just gonna keep pushing through stuff. So far, I haven't found the breaking point, but yeah, I mean, you can wedge it into undercuts and it'll just keep driving forward. It's about 100-to-1 in low range, and that seems to be about perfect for this car.
One of the things I wanted to mention about the 20-inch wheels as well is that companies are starting to make 17-inch rotors too, which obviously you cannot fit inside of a 17-inch wheel. And braking is probably dramatically overlooked in the crawler world because you think you have so much torque that it's just gonna stop you, but brakes are probably just as important as a highway vehicle. When you add weight, when you add power, you add torque, you're gonna wanna consider stopping. And when you're doing something really extreme off of ledges and waterfalls and stuff.
Yeah, so the brakes are super important in this car. This is running 14-inch rotors with 4-piston Willwoods. There is now a setup to run a 17-inch rotor, and you're supposed to get 30% more braking. And the thing you don't think about with this car is it doesn't have power brakes. That's a manual brake system, so you're pushing on the pedal hard. So yeah, one of the next upgrades I'll probably do is go to that 17-inch rotor. It really fills the entire wheel out, but yeah, 30% increase in braking is huge.
Awesome. And this thing, I don't know if you guys have caught the vibe yet, but a lot of it is just built for simplicity, and ease of repair on trails is important too. One of the things that Adrian here at Matt and Yotas pointed out were these brake lines. And you want to talk about them because it is kind of different.
Yeah, so it's a plastic brake line. It's made by All Star Performance. And really where these brake lines came from is drag cars. A lot of guys just needed serviceability. So I have a couple buddies running buggies for a while, and they love these. So yeah, you're just a shark bite connector. You can just unclip a line and swap a new one on. I had one break the first day I was out, my own fault. We had it swapped out on trail in 10 minutes.
Yep, so serviceability, especially when you're on a trail where a tow truck can't come get you.
Absolutely.
Serviceability is kind of paramount when you're thinking about building these and doing trail repairs. That's why also you want things like Brannick 300M axle shafts in there. Chances of breaking those are probably pretty low.
Yeah, definitely. Other simple things, there's no limit straps, there's no bump stops in this car. Basically what we do is we'll over oil the shock just a tiny bit to kind of cushion it as it comes to full bump. But yeah, you don't, just to keep it simple, you don't have a limit strap, you don't have a bump stop in here. Not normal for an everyday vehicle, but on something like this, it works really well.
Now, I didn't have limit straps on our 3rd-gen 4Runner that solid axle swapped and has 16-inch coilovers in the rear with a cage. And I'll tell you what, it got really scary on Spring Creek, almost dumping, actually Dustin was driving, almost dumping him over a ledge.
Yeah.
Because it just kept going up. Have you experienced anything like any negatives of not having limit straps?
No, and I think the big difference is that this car is so light and small that it just doesn't affect it the same as it does with a big 4Runner like that. The other thing that's really gonna affect that on a car like this is the link geometry. So what the anti-squat numbers look like, especially when you're dropping stuff or side hilling stuff, that's really gonna like keep that car planted down to the ground.
Awesome. These boat sides just look so cool. Now, as a guy who owns a business here building what I would consider, compared to this, normal trucks, I think most people think what we do is really extreme, but this is extreme for our world. I want to start incorporating stuff like this into like daily drivers, and I think boat sides would be a really cool thing to do because I think Jeep people are doing it, but you know, see a lot of Toyotas with boat sides, and we do have a GX550 coming in where we're doing hybrid boat sides.
Nice.
And a whole entire belly pan. Have you ever been hung up on this, dude? Like for real, like really stuck?
Not yet, no. It would be very hard. So with the front and rear steering and all the clearance, even if you get like wedged into a spot or you feel like you're turtled out, you can almost like rock in the car and you can just steer both the axles. eventually something's gonna break loose.
And you haven't rolled it yet, nothing like that?
I haven't rolled it yet. I'm a little worried about smashing up that nice fiberglass hood.
Yeah, apparently this is a one of one. We were talking about scanning it because...
yeah, this is unobtainium now.
Yeah, that hood is too cool to be unobtainium, so we need to get a 3D scan of it so that it can be redone, maybe 3D printed or something like that, something cool. Maybe Stash Fab will have that available for you if you want to build a portal buggy and you can buy the parts from Matt. You know, it'd be cool is to do a kit car like this and do our own tube chassis.
That'd be amazing.
Maybe a Stash Fab collab with Matt and Yotas is in the works in the future.
Absolutely.
Tell me about rear steer, man. This is another one of those things. It's got Hummer portals, H1 portals. Everybody's seen the new electric Hummers. They have like crab walking, and maybe we can take it out in the parking lot so we can throw B-roll over the top of this of a proper crab walk in a rock crawler. But tell me about the benefits of rear steer. I saw it in person on the trail. This thing with portals and rear steer is kind of next level. Even, shoot, there's buggies out there that are $180,000. And this thing is just dominating every line. A lot of it, driver mod's most important, right? Absolutely. You know the right lines to take and everything, but the ground clearance and rear steer, psycho. Tell me about it, I'll stop talking.
Yeah, so this car is short. It's a 105-inch wheelbase. So with the 45 degrees of steering, I mean, you can get it in absurd places. You can just turn into the tightest spots. That's been the biggest thing with this car is lines that I used to fight all the time, I can just get into them one shot now, all the time. And then, yeah, being able to crab walk the car sideways or just tight turns, I can just maneuver through anything. And then once you're up on a big wall, sometimes you just need the rear tires in the right place. And so you can just work it and you're not backing off the obstacle. You're really just, you could stay in it and just work it around.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch somebody who's a skilled rock crawler at the same time then have rear steer and portals, because you guys know if you do any wheeling and just a little bit of rocking of the wheel while you're stuck up on an obstacle is all you need to do. And they kind of, Matt does the same thing, but he's doing it front and rear. And I didn't see you reset for obstacles like at all while we were on the trail either, because you can, well, one, you're familiar with the trail, obviously, and it's like, you know, Chinaman's for you is pretty easy, which is crazy, but, or sorry, not Chinaman's. Gosh, Carnage Canyon is pretty easy for you, which is crazy. But the ability to crab walk and get lined up for the line that you want to take is super dope.
And I'll say Carnage is like the perfect place for this car to go out and just learn it. So that was the first place I took this car. And there is a big learning curve with the rear steer. You're just kind of always thinking about it. There's a joystick in the cab that goes side to side. And so when you get out there, I kind of knew the trail already. And then getting out there with the rear steer, I can kind of have more fun and see what the car can actually do.
Can you show us where the rear steer is and how you do it?
Yeah, here, I'll move the wheel out of the way. So this is the rear steer. So it just goes back and forth. And basically, it's steering the front of the rear tires, whichever direction you're pulling this lever.
Cool, so it's kind of ergonomic and it makes sense when you're doing it.
Yeah, because you want to be able to picture it without having to look back at your rear tire all the time.
Yep. This is like quadruple sheared.
Yeah, triple shear.
It's a triple shear here. And PSC hydraulic rams front and rear. That might be one of the most expensive components on here.
Yeah, those rams have gotten crazy expensive. I bought them before that.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Obviously, triangulated 4-link, front and rear.
Yeah, so single triangulated in the back. The downside to a single triangulated is that the axle swings a little bit as it flexes.
Yep.
Obviously, that doesn't matter in a car like this because the rear tires turn, so you can always overcome it. And then the front is dual triangulated, so you get a little less of that movement. Yeah, and the big issue with the front is trying to clear the links with the drive shaft and still get enough triangulation out of the uppers and get your ride height correct. So there's a lot of playing with all this stuff. And the front's stretched out a little bit just to get the suspension, the shock where I wanted it, and get the links to the length that I wanted. Because really this chassis is set up to run the only other ones that exist have quad engines in them.
So when we're talking about triangulation, it's essentially not being parallel with the frame, taking an angle on the upper and lower links. So here's your upper link, here's your lower, and this one has geometry going away from the frame in both directions, and the fitment of all of these other components in here.
Yeah.
And then when you're talking about links, in case you're not familiar with links at all or this kind of stuff, it's you know, 4-link just simply means that it has 4 links, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Drive shaft here. 3 links on like a Tacoma. If you do a conversion from like a leaf spring Tacoma, you don't have to move your gas tank. And 4 links is the way to, 4 linking things is the way to go. That just enables you to get more wheel travel, more flex. Obviously this has a ton of flex because that ramp right there is 44 inches tall. And this thing doesn't even have a problem with that whatsoever. In fact, you could drive right over the top of it and off the back. It wouldn't do anything to this car. Sweet, you wanna go to the drive-thru?
Sure. What do you want to get?
Coffee.
I'm down.